Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chayam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Vede Nashtaprahi Bhadretu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, today we're starting new chapter, chapter 38. No one listens to a poor man. From 1965 until 1970, Srila Prabhupada had concentrated mainly on re-establishing Krishna consciousness in America. His plan had been that if the Americans turned to Krishna consciousness, the rest of the world would follow. Although his preaching to the English-speaking people had begun in India some 60 years ago, some 6 years of single-handed endeavor there had convinced him that Indians were either too absorbed in politics, too ignorant of their spiritual heritage, or too crippled by poverty to seriously accept Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he had not been successful. But in the United States, success had come. Clearly, America was the prime field for implanting Krishna consciousness. Yet Prabhupada found the West uncultured and uncivilized. If a trace of civilization remained anywhere, he would often say it was in India, the heart of the original Vedic culture. But to speak of 71, even now, I mean, it's going down so fast. It's amazing. What civilization. By 1970, he had demonstrated through his extensive traveling and preaching that he intended to establish the Krishna consciousness movement, not only in the US, but all over the world, especially in India. Even accepting that preaching in the United States and preaching in India were equally important, still the preaching in the United States was going well without Prabhupada's constant direct management. What he had begun, his American disciples would continue. But in India, Prabhupada could not allow his disciples to manage ISKCON. He saw how often and how easily the Indians were able to cheat his disciples. It happens. And not just American disciples, they were ready to cheat even Indian disciples. Half of ISKCON's work in India was being spoiled, he said, due to his disciples being cheated. If they put on a Pandal program, they might end up paying several times the standard cost. The only way for ISKCON to develop in India would be under Prabhupada's direct management. Beginning in 1970 with a small band of American disciples, Prabhupada had traveled from place to place in India as a model sannyasi, obtaining a great new field for ISKCON. Now he wanted to construct big temples in India, 3 in particular, one in Vrindavan, one in Mayapur, and one in Bombay. As early as 1967, he had attempted to make an American house for his disciples in Vrindavan. Mayapur, being the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, was especially important, and Bombay was India's major city, the gateway to India. As with most of Prabhupada's big plans, even his closest disciples could not fully comprehend the scope of his vision. But Prabhupada knew what he wanted, and he knew it all depended on Krishna. Gradually, he began to unfold his plans. So in 1971, he wanted 3 big temples in India, Vrindavan, Mayapur, Bombay. Can we just imagine the scale that he wanted to take the ISKCON to? Then 1977, he left his body. So, and just opening temples in India, it wasn't just a small storefront or small room. He wanted to make a really big, grand temple, all 3 of them. That was his vision. And he did it. I mean, how he must have motivated his disciples to collect funds. And the funds were coming from America and Europe, mostly America. And funds were not somebody was donating, it was by book distribution. They were collecting money. Just imagine how much book distribution must be going on at that time. How much profit must be there. And then in India, not just the money, you need manpower, you need architects, engineers, project managers to do the construction. It's not that easy. And all three temples are in different cities, far away from each other. And to manage everything, along with his travel, with his uh, writing purpose, with his training his disciples, he was managing construction work also. It's mind-boggling. Temple construction, he said, was secondary to book publication and distribution. But Krishna consciousness must run on two parallel lines, just as a train runs on two rails. One rail was Bhagavad Marg, the other Pancharatriki Rithi. Bhagavad Marg referred to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting about Krishna and disseminating the message of Krishna. The second rail, Pancharatriki Vidhi, referred to the rules and regulations for worshipping the deity in the temple. Of the two, Bhagavad Marg was the more important. Although great liberated souls like Haridas Thakur could remain in perfect Krishna consciousness simply by chanting Hare Krishna constantly. Prabhupada knew that his disciples, with their restless natures and past sinful habits, needed the special purification of worshipping the Lord in the temple. Therefore, one of the reasons for wanting to establish temples in India was to purify his disciples by giving them elaborate deity worship. So this was one of the reasons that he wanted, because we are not at the level that we can just sit down in any place under a tree and just chant. Not going to happen. It doesn't happen that fast. So all the services in the temple are required for us to remain focused. Temples, however, were also for preaching. No one listens to a poor man, Prabhupada would say. And he therefore wanted to construct palatial buildings to attract the masses to Krishna consciousness. Especially he wanted this in India, where the tradition of temple worship still existed. Building temples and worshipping the deity was secondary to publishing and distributing books, but it was not to be neglected. Prabhupada prepared to give temple construction in Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Bombay as much of his attention as necessary. Bombay, November 1971. For a year, the devotees had been living at the Akash Ganga address, 2 apartments on the 7th floor of a building in the heart of Bombay. But Prabhupada was not satisfied with this. He wanted land in Bombay to build on and to expand. He was determined. Instead of his usual morning walks, he could take long rides in his car to observe various parts of the city. Because many of the ISKCON life members lived in aristocratic Malabar Hill, Prabhupada's disciples thought it is a good place for a temple. On several occasions, Prabhupada rode to the top of Malabar Hill and walked around various properties, considering certain large buildings as possible temples. But for one reason or another, he judged them all unacceptable. Then in November, a Mr. N, so his name is not mentioned here, full name, just Mr. N, offered to sell ISKCON 5 acres in Juhu, practically on the shore of the Arabian Sea. As soon as Srila Prabhupada approached the land, he remembered having seen and considered it years before. In August of 1965, during the weeks just before he had left for America, he had been staying at Scindia Colony. In the evenings, he had gone to the home of Scindia's steamship company owner, Mrs. Sumati Morarji in Juhu, where he had read and explained Srimad Bhagavatam for her and his guests. Several times he had passed this very property and he had thought what a good location it would be for an ashram and Radha Krishna temple. Although his attention had been absorbed in the task of leaving India, he had still considered the Juhu land. Now he was again in Juhu, reconsidering the same land he had noticed years before. He took it as a reminder from Krishna. So he took it as a reminder that Krishna wanted this land only. The land was overgrown with tall grasses and bushes, and many coconut palms stood throughout. In the back of the property were several tenement buildings. The land bordered on Juhu Road, the main traffic artery, back to Bombay, 18 miles to the south. A broad expanse of beach on the Arabian Sea was a brief walk away. The location was good, peaceful, yet not remote. Several five-star hotels bordered the nearby beach, and developers were beginning work on other hotels and apartment buildings. When Prabhupada walked along the beach, he liked even more the idea of buying the land. Rich men had weekend homes on the beach, and thousands of Bombayites would be out enjoying the beach on Sundays. Daily, hundreds of Juhu residents use the long, broad seashore for morning walks before going to work. Almost always people were strolling or gathering there, and yet the beach was clean. The mild waves and open skies were inviting. The local was ideal, not only for hotels, but for Krishna conscious center. So yes, it's an ideal location actually. Prabhupada wanted the Juhu land, and although his disciples continued to show him houses in Malabar Hill, he didn't change his mind. His disciples wanted whatever he wanted, and yet they had trouble developing enthusiasm for a property so far from the city and with no available housing or temple facility. Mr. N, the owner of the 5-acre plot, had set a reasonable price and seemed friendly and sincere. Yet risks were involved in such transactions, and in this case, Prabhupada even found reasons for suspicion. Through his lawyer, he learned that Mr. N had previously entered into an agreement to sell the same land to the C company, but had later cancelled the agreement. The C company had then filed a suit against Mr. N for breach of contract. If the Bombay High Court decided in the C company's favor, the land would be awarded to them. When Prabhupada's secretary questioned Mr. N about this entanglement, Mr. N ensured that the C company could not win the suit, but that in any case, ISKCON could withhold a certain portion of the payment until the litigation with C was settled. See, this real estate has always been in India, especially in India, it's been a murky business. Nothing clean. And also, another problem is the judiciary. It takes such a long time to settle anything that people lose interest. Mr. N was a well-known figure in Bombay, formerly the Sheriff of Bombay, an honorary judicial police position. He was now publisher, editor of one of the largest daily English newspapers in Bombay. He was wealthy, owning several properties in Juhu and Bombay, and influential, not a man would want to oppose. To purchase a Juhu land under the present circumstances required boldness. In late December, Prabhupada met with Mr. and Mrs. N at their home in the Theosophical Colony in Juhu. Mr. N's home was on the beach, and thus the visit afforded Prabhupada another opportunity to appreciate the value and beauty of Juhu Beach, with its border of palms leaning towards the sea. The Theosophical Colony was a private neighborhood of attractive homes with luxuriant lawns and flower gardens and many exotic birds. Ashoka trees grew on either side of Mr. N's driveway, and a line of palm trees standing just inside the massive stone wall encircled the property. A gardener opened the gate for Prabhupada and the few disciples with him. Mr. N was a short, stocky man with a receding hairline. His hair was clipped short, and his round face was poke-marked. He appeared to be in his 50s. Mrs. N had a fair complexion and, unusual for an Indian, wore her hair short. Prabhupada had brought flower garlands and prasadam from the Radha Krishna deities of ISKCON Bombay, and these he offered to Mr. and Mrs. N. Mr. N invited his guests to sit with him and his wife on the front porch, which faced a picturesque garden. So just imagine Juhu. He had such a big place where he was staying, and he had so many of the properties. So must be a very, very rich man. Srila Prabhupada openly expressed his appreciation of the Juhu land, but admitted he had very little money. Mr. N, however, seemed inclined toward Prabhupada and said he wanted to sell him the property. Quickly, they reached a verbal agreement. Mrs. N, however, the agreement seemed too liberal, but when she objected, her husband overruled her. Prabhupada and Mr. N agreed on a down payment of 2 lakh rupees. After making the down payment of ISKCON would immediately receive the conveyance. ISKCON would pay the remaining balance of 14 lakh rupees later in regular installments. Prabhupada negotiated further regarding the down payment, offering to pay 50,000 rupees now and another 50,000 later, at which time ISKCON would be allowed to move onto the land. As soon as they paid the remaining 100,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees, the down payment would be complete and Mr. N would give them the deed. Mr. N agreed. So 16 lakh rupees, even at that time, it was a big amount. But Prabhupada was ready to pay. But there's so much of complication in this Jugu land that happened later on because Mr. N wanted to cheat Prabhupada and ISKCON of the money. And we'll read further. Giriraj Maharaj was very much involved with this project and he has written a book, the whole Jugu land issue. Srila Prabhupada was always one to think carefully over such business transactions. He had said that if a businessman tells you, "Sir, for you I'm making no profit," you should know he is lying. Therefore, even in ISKCON's early days in New York City, when the real estate Shah, Mr. Price had posed as a well-wisher of the devotees, Prabhupada had been suspicious. Mr. Price had in fact cheated devotees, despite Prabhupada's warnings to them. Now as then, Prabhupada was suspicious, but he wanted the Jugu land and would take the risk. Prabhupada had taken similar chances. At Jhansi in 1953, he had occupied a building, although he had little legal standing of financial security. And in his first storefront in New York, as well as in his largest building to date, the Watseka Avenue Church in Los Angeles, he had moved in without assurance of the monthly payments. Practically, the entire success of his movement had come by his taking one risk after another for Krishna. When the devotees in Boston had written to Prabhupada that they had rented a big house of $1,000 a month, calculating that they would be able to make the payment by dramatically increasing the Back to Godhead sales, Prabhupada had approved and had even commended their example to others. So if some risks were involved in Bombay, that was only natural. And so much risk, not just in Bombay, it took in America also, or Canada also. In Toronto, devotees, when Prabhupada visited Toronto, temple president showed him a church, huge church, right in the heart of downtown Toronto. So Prabhupada looked at it and he told the temple president, at that time it was like $3 lakh, $300,000, something like that. It was a huge amount for the devotees. And Prabhupada that time said, no, we should not take that much risk. But then maybe in the evening or something like that, and he told temple president, no, we should be ready to take risk for Krishna. Just go and buy the property. Make all the arrangements. And still till today, that is ISKCON's property. And same thing in Detroit, Fisher Mansion. It was a big palace. And Prabhupada went to negotiate. It's a very big palace and a beautiful building. And the property dealer, the real estate agent. So he was talking to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told his disciples, I want to speak with the owner directly. I don't want to deal with property dealer. And property dealer was taken back. It doesn't happen like this in America. You cannot talk to the owner directly. But disciples somehow made the arrangement for Prabhupada to speak with the owner. And Prabhupada spoke, preached to him, and convinced him to bring the price down significantly. So, and he offered, okay, we'll pay you cash. And the devotees behind Prabhupada, they were looking at each other. How is he going to pay cash? We don't have any cash. But then when Prabhupada went to make the final deal, with the owner. He had Ambarish Prabhu, who's Alfred Ford, great grandson of Henry Ford, and he's a part owner of Ford Motor Company. And there was one Lekha Shravanti Mataji. She was a daughter of the union leader of the Ford Company. In the union leader and the owners, they don't get along. But they're kids, they were Prabhupada's disciples. So when the deal was made, Prabhupada looked at Ambarish Prabhu. He said, can we make him the payment? So Ambarish Prabhu, if I'm not wrong, if I remember the figures correctly, Ambarish Prabhu paid $175,000 cash, and Lekha Shravanti Mataji paid $125,000 cash. So $300,000 cash was paid, and Prabhupada got the mansion. So he was really, he knew what he was doing, and Krishna was there to help him always. So here also, he is making such a big commitment. So let's see how it goes. Once committed to the land, Prabhupada began to unfold his vision for a grand project in Bombay. On December 22nd, he wrote to Yamuna. Here in Bombay, we have got good prospects to purchase a very large land in Juhu for very cheap price, just in the middle of a rich neighborhood. We shall build our camp there and begin constructing a temple immediately. And later on, we shall develop a large hotel and school. There is also a chance of getting a nice bungalow in Bombay city also. So in general, we shall make our headquarters in Bombay, also build up Vrindavan and Mayapur. While devotees around the world delighted to hear Prabhupada's plans for a Bombay center, devotees in Bombay had mixed feelings. To envision a temple rising from what was little more than a jungle tract was not easy. Nor was it easy to envision the five-star ISKCON hotel Prabhupada spoke of. The tenement buildings in the rear of the land were fully occupied, and according to Indian law, the tenants could not be removed. If the devotees moved onto the land, they would have to erect temporary housing, maybe even a temporary temple. And the land was mosquito-ridden and teeming with rats. Juhu was a small, almost isolated neighborhood without wealthy ISKCON supporters. Although Prabhupada and land speculators predicted that Juhu would grow, at present it was only a village of about 2,000. To reside at Juhu would be a drastic contrast to the comfortable Akash Ganga building in downtown Bombay. And Juhu at that time, can we imagine? Only 2,000 people were living there and just totally outside Bombay. But now it's pretty much the heart of Bombay. Tamal Krishna explained to Prabhupada, we are Westerners, we cannot live like this. We need doorknobs and running water. And there were no doors and rats infested with rats, mosquitoes. And look at what Prabhupada said. Don't you want to become purified? Prabhupada replied. Means more austerities we perform for service of Krishna, more purification happens. It is for our benefit. Any austerity, any service we do for Krishna, it's for our benefit. When the Bombay devotees learned of Srila Prabhupada's response to Tamal Krishna, the words, don't you want to become purified, went deep into their hearts. They knew that Prabhupada was asking them to become more austere and that it was for their ultimate benefit. They began to regard moving to Juhu as a formidable spiritual challenge rather than a drudgery. Developing the Juhu property was important to this spiritual master, and it was something greater and more wonderful than they at present realized. So yes, great experience, but along with it was sacrifice and austerity of his disciples. And right now, Juhu is one of the biggest and major temples in Islam. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments? You all have safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.